Like the previous speakers, I want to thank our host today, Laura's class event. This was really nice today. I think they picked the order of presenters properly. You heard about some great technology today, some great solutions. I'm going to maybe dampen some of the enthusiasm and talk about some of the problems you might encounter as you go into a VDI world, a little bit of reality as you try and roll out in a big way. First of all, how many people here, how many companies here are currently deploying VDI desktops, for their end users? Any of you over 1,000 users? Over 1,000 VDIs in production? Nobody? Anybody? So that's why I'm here to talk to you today. So there's obviously a lot of promise around VDI. You heard about great endpoint devices, and Panologic has definitely changed the way people are thinking. You heard from VMware, obviously the market leader, great software for virtualization and for enabling VDI. You heard about great backup solutions. You heard the market is huge. So why isn't everybody doing it, right? Why aren't there more of these out there? So I'm going to talk about some of the issues that you will encounter, and then a technology that we've put out in the market that is helping companies scale to very large VDI deployments. Would it be nice, you had 10,000 people in your company and everybody was on VDI and everyone was comfortable with the performance? We will allow you to do that. We can enable you to do that. Okay, so just real quick on the company. You probably haven't heard of us, but we are actually a very successful company, been around for about 10 years. We are a worldwide company. We are totally focused on software development. Our founder actually came from HP and worked in the group that was developing management tools. Saw people buying OpenView, competing against Tivoli and BMC and CA. Companies were spending 8 figures, $10 million plus with 2 to 3 years of deployment, and still weren't really happy with the products they got. Figured he could do it better. So he's an entrepreneur, started the company, and we've been very successful. About 1,000 customers worldwide. Some are end users, some go through managed service providers, some use a cloud offering that we and some other people provide. So very well established. The company's been around for 10 years now. We're VMware ready, we're Citrix ready, we're SAP certified. So you haven't heard of us that much here, although we do have some nice clients in Latin America, but we are a very well established company. And as I talk about, 300 end user customers, and when I talk about customers here, these aren't people who have, a couple of servers under management. Citibank, relevant because Banamex is, part of Citibank. We're managing 4,000 servers worldwide, doing a combination of serving applications via Citrix, and about 30,000 VDI desktops in the Citibank infrastructure. When there's an ATM network that slows down in Miami, we've had instances where it's slow because there's an Oracle server in part of the infrastructure in Tokyo that's run out of memory. And we correlate all that together, and with a click of a mouse, we show them exactly where the problem is. They're remediated very quickly. So again, these are well-known companies. These are very large installations. Some of them have systems running here in Mexico and in Latin America. So I'm not going to go to the evolution of mainframe to client server. You know about that. I put this slide up because this is the world we live in today. It's a very complex world. End users don't always believe that. They think that, I've got a desktop or a laptop and somewhere there's a little server with my storage on it and everything's really wonderful. This is the world we live in. It's a very complex environment. There's a lot of different tiers to today's infrastructure. And when you virtualize something, you make it very, very difficult to pinpoint the root cause of problems. So a lot of what we do today is helping clients with infrastructures that look like this. The biggest in the last year, as people have started moving Citrix into a virtual infrastructure, we've been called up every single day of the week by some companies saying, I'm running Citrix apps, I'm running XenApp, it's a virtual, and it's an ESX server. Citrix is slow, but all my Citrix tool shows that Citrix is fine. My ESX tools show that ESX is fine, yet everyone's complaining about the user experience. And we find is that Citrix is fine. It's in a virtual machine here. There's another virtual machine on that ESX host, and something's happening there that's using up all the resources. So the whole ESX infrastructure gets slowed down. The Citrix users complain, but the individual silos that are managing these all think everything is fine. So what we do is we correlate all of this together. So we take everything that's responsible for the end user experience. We look at the laptop, the desktop, the thin client, and we trace the data flow across all the different tiers, through the network, through the app, through the virtual infrastructure, into the network, down to the LUN and the storage device, and correlate it all together and give you a business service view. So when that user says, I'm slow, you can tell exactly what it is. And this is what our clients do with us today. So what's the problem? Now, I didn't get into VDI yet. I'm going to get into that because that is what we're here talking about today. But you think about how virtualization has made this root cause problem very difficult. Now think about a user who every day of the week is in a different place, a different geo, coming in from a different device. I know a lot of people here today have a laptop, and they have an iPad, and they have a Droid or an iPhone. And depending on what you're doing, you might be accessing your corporate network through different devices and different geos. Well, that means you're coming in through a different server infrastructure. So just managing what's happening with those servers is almost useless to you now. You need to track that user. Okay, when Rick, and I do have all three of those devices with me, when I am in Mexico City and I'm going into via my iPhone, my corporate network has to track what Rick is doing. If I say it's slow, they've got to know exactly how I've accessed it. Now imagine a company with 100,000 users. We have clients now. I think our biggest VDI deployment is DuPont. I think DuPont's got a presence down here. 70,000 VDI desktops that we manage the entire environment. Some number of those, I don't know what it is, say go to the same place every day, but a lot of them are mobile, they're moving around, they're working from home one day. When the swine flu epidemic came out, there was a rash of people implementing VDI because companies in the US have to have what they call pandemic preparedness. You have to be prepared to keep the business running. The banks have to do the transactions, the cars have to come off the assembly plant, even if you can't go to the office that day. People have to work from home. So imagine, I've got to have the same experience, the same access from my home PC, where I have very little control of what they have, to the corporate desktop. So there's so much complexity built in here. You need to track what that individual user is doing across the entire paradigm. Again, that's what we do really well. So, what is the EG product? So we want to be able to resolve problems very quickly, no matter where they are in the infrastructure. The reality is that VMware has a massive amount of market share in terms of the hypervisor world, especially in the production world. The desktop world, there are good solutions from other companies out there that people are using. The reality is we need to support all of it. We need to support a combination of Citrix and Microsoft and VMware. And then clients are telling us, okay, we're going to migrate, from Zen server to ESX, and we're going to maintain two of them for a period of time. We're going to put a little bit of Hyper-V in the test and dev world because it's cheap. ESX in the top end. So you need to be able to support all these different platforms to give you the ability to be mobile and to be agile and to use the best solution for the users. So that's what we aim to do. No matter what you're using, no matter how complex your environment is, and I explained a very complex environment for Citibank, we can instantaneously show you the root cause of the problems. Now, I asked about the VDI adoption. It's a loaded question. I always ask that question. Excuse me. Because there's usually, one guy in the audience who's had a very successful deployment. Hopefully they used EG. And then a lot of people who really want to do it, but they're faced with two dilemmas. So no matter who you talk to, there are two problems that hinder rapid deployment, mass deployment of VDI. You probably know what they are, but I'm going to show you what, this is kind of the flow of VDI. So a company, wants to do VDI. For some of those reasons I mentioned, the other speakers mentioned, they want to do VDI. These are some of the issues they have. They're all good reasons. Everyone, as I say, no two VDIs are alike. A little different in every place. So typically they engage someone who's had experience doing this to help them do a POC or a pilot. The consulting companies doing VDI are often doing dozens of them at one time. Most of you will do one in the next 5 years. So you should use someone who's got a lot of experience because a lot of gotchas along the way. So it looks good, looks interesting. Then they go and do a POC for maybe support hundreds of users. I was just at second largest company in America, maybe the world. You can probably figure it is. They want to do 300,000 VDI desktops. They have something like a $100 million budget to do this. We're going to get to that in a second. You know how many they've got in use today? I mean, you all know this company. 50. So they're on the road to having everyone using VDI. They got 50 out of 300,000 because they're so worried about these problems I'm going to talk about here. So they do the POC. It looks good, looks interesting. And to make sure the POC is successful, am I out of time already?
I need you to move your microphone because for the sound. I'm sorry. No.
I'm from New York. I tend to flail my arms around, so I probably knocked it off. Sorry. Everybody hear me okay now? Okay. So this is what every company does. So they do this POC and they say, okay, let's do it for 100 users or 200, maybe 50. And we don't want any performance issues during the POC. So let's go buy some dedicated servers, some dedicated licenses. We don't want contention on the VMs. We're going to buy dedicated ESX for it. We're going to go buy a nice EMC or NetApp or Hitachi or whatever you'd like, array. And they do the POC and everyone thinks this is wonderful. And it is. It's really great flexibility. So then they say, okay, that was for 100 users and we spent $250,000. So if we want to do this for 2,000 users, what's that going to cost? So because they're just extrapolating what they spent for the first group, and many projects, DOA, dead on arrival right there. The CIO, the CFO says, what, are you crazy? We're going to spend $3-4 million to do this? So this is very, very typical. So what you see happening out there are these assessments that are going on where companies are trying to figure out, okay, what is my environment really going to look like? I don't have to buy so much storage, so much networking, so many licenses. What can I use that I currently own? That's a big one. What can I re-provision into the VDI environment instead of buying everything brand new? So there needs some intelligence there, and I'll talk about it. That one usually, very few companies think they're going to get a day one ROI on VDI. They know they're going to make an investment to over time be able to save some money. But the one that kills them is that now we don't have an over-provisioned back end and we start having some performance issues. And if you haven't had them already, you will. Say with a lot of confidence. The user experience at some level will suffer. Okay, think about that early slide, how complex it was. Doesn't mean that it can't be fixed. It just means it's really hard to detect where it is. And what happens in a lot of companies, and actually before I came to DG Innovations, I had a virtualization consulting company. We sold it to Glass House, if you've heard of them. And we did 100,000 seat desktop for JP Morgan Chase and 200,000 for MetLife and big deals like that. And basically all of these projects started going, they hit the wall, they stopped, and then if they had some good tools, they moved on. If they didn't, sometimes a lot of money was spent and the software sat on the shelf. So you're going to see this. There's no way around it. What you need is to have some tools in place. And EG is not a panacea by any stretch. There's other things you'll need as well. But if you're going to do a successful VDI rollout, you need to know these are going to happen. You need to be prepared for them. So how do we help you? Well, first of all, we improve the ROI, and we've had some great success. People here familiar with Computer Science Corp, CSC? One of the biggest outsourcers in the world, $40 billion company. So they're probably the #1 deployer of full system VDIs in the world. And like DuPont I mentioned, that was through them. A lot of other ones, all over the world were selling them. So we're part of their reference architecture. So one of the reasons they're winning these deals is whereas someone else might be bidding 20 million or 30 million or 40 million, they're coming in much less because during the POC and pilot phase, they take a look at the whole infrastructure. And they don't assess whether this desktop has applications suitable for VDI. They look at the infrastructure with our tool. And they say, these desktops are going to be really storage intensive. We need to get, a big storage back end. These, not so much. These are very memory intensive. We don't need so much storage here. We need to bump up the memory here, and so on and so forth. These guys are just doing tiny little transactions over the network all the time. We need a little bigger pipe for them. And they do this assessment of the infrastructure. So at the end of the day, they don't buy a super amount of storage, memory, and network for everyone. They buy the appropriate amount for each. That's what they propose to their customers. They've been very successful winning that business. So we help you with that. Again, the second one is you're going to have a performance issue. If you brought all the vendors up here, they'll all have horror stories and war stories of how we overcame them. But you're going to need to have a tool that's going to be able to pinpoint pretty quickly, because you don't want these problems to linger and people think this is not going to work. As people from Pano mentioned earlier, people have been trying to use thin client technology for years. Look good, always something missing. Streaming technology was one of the things that really hurt it quite a bit. Pano has solved that in an incredible way. Okay, but there's going to be something. So you need a tool to help you figure out what it is and figure it out quickly so the rollout continues. This make sense? So what we provide is total VDI visibility. Okay, we're talking about the user. So again, I won't ask the question, but the design criteria at every VDI is very simple. For the user level, give me performance that I had with my desktop or my laptop. I don't expect better, but I really won't accept less. That's the design criteria. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Because you've got this complex backend to support it, a single failure can bring down hundreds of virtual desktops. I've got horror stories on that happening. Something really simple, not even a hardware failure, just something was overrun because they had too many users coming through one pipe. Something blew up in the back end, couldn't figure it out quickly, projects were set back months, okay? Mentioned performance being a barrier. So what we do is we give you, as I mentioned, this total visibility. We look at that user, if he's complaining, yesterday I was fine, today I'm not, and I'll show you in a second how we do it, we can actually see what changed in the environment in the last whenever period of time. There's no limit to it. See exactly what changed. He was good here, now he's not. What changed? Immediately show what those things are, remediate, move on. So we have a demo set up, and this is very visual software. There's a lot to it. I'm telling you now, if you did a full demo from us and you said, I want to see everything, you better allocate about 4 hours. That's how, how comprehensive this product is. But we have a little demo running. I'm not sure if it's here or outside. In here? Okay, so I recommend, if this looks interesting to you, if you're interested in VDI, doesn't have to even be VDI. If you've got things like Citrix that you're having performance issues, it's hard for you to detect, these guys can show it to you. I think you'd be very impressed how quickly it is. Someone was talking about time to deployment the other day. We talk about time to value. Typically, to monitor about 100 servers, we're on site and remote for about a week. That includes installation, deployment, customization, report writing. Hey, the exec wants to see this tool. The techies want to see that report. Techies want to see that report. 1 week, we're done. That includes some training for you. So it's been built to be very comprehensive, very canned. Get this thing up and running in a couple of hours. Have running in your environment in a couple of days. So I'm not going to go through all this, but again, it's a comprehensive view of the entire environment. It's agnostic to what kind of hypervisor you're using, operating system you're using, and it covers all the components. Very simple to use. Most of our clients, when they buy from us, it's usually the subject matter expert, domain experts who bring us in. The VDI people need a tool. But once it gets into use, it usually winds up in the hands of the help desk, which is where you want it. One of the things I didn't talk about is, when you have a problem, the time to resolution is key, and it's money. It's money to your organizations. So our big clients, this is in the help desk. When performance issue happens, they go to the topology. They look for, okay, here's the user. The one that's red is probably where the problem is. And this is a real live view of what our topology, it's a very simple topology. That's what it looks like. So instead of calling, okay, this things are slow, let's get network in here and apps in here and tools in here and servers in here, just call the people that can fix the problem. Don't bother everybody else. I mentioned, again, better in the demo, automatic correlation for root cause. So again, they'll see things like, I'm used to having response time in milliseconds, and now I'm 12 seconds. That's a good indication something's wrong. Again, I'm giving you a quick snapshot of this. Very rarely do we solve problems if something is down hard. You got 100 tools that can tell you that. The beauty of the product is I'm starting to aggregate errors, network transmissions, memory leaks, things like that. because I see it all and relate it back to the end user, we'll tell you, you're going to have a problem. The phone's going to be ringing in a couple of hours. The time to fix it is now, before they start to scream, before they start complaining about performance. A little more comprehensive. This is just one last thing I want to talk about. So track configuration changes. So in a virtual environment, this is so key. And then add VDI into it, it's exponential level of complexity added on. So there's a problem. There's a performance issue. All the groups are reporting that we're healthy, everything is fine, it's what we expect, yet that user is still complaining. So what we do is we track all configuration changes across the infrastructure supporting that end user, that user experience. So when that user says, when Rick calls up and says, I'm slow, this is 9 o'clock in the morning, that last night it was fine, today it's really crummy. We can go back and give you a detailed report of every change in that infrastructure, whether it was a patch that applied, a new version of the backup software, or hardware changes that were made. We can go back and see everything in one little capsule, what happened since it was good to where it is not, and then you can remediate very quickly. Very, very powerful tool. I've got stories where we went to clients, they want to do a POC of this, and we had fairly large purchase orders within days, because as we put it in, something happened. They started doing their normal fire drill. We said, look here. They saw it immediately, fixed it in minutes, seconds, whatever it might be. Very powerful. So we give 360-degree visibility across every VDI tier. Again, if you're going to be successful in VDI, you want to do this, you have to have a tool like this. There's a very prominent gentleman at VMware who's even said things like, it's irresponsible